will be a short version of a workshop given at the conference Exploring Visual Worlds of Education online in June 2021. What I would like to cover in this workshop is I'll give an introduction to what I prefer to call spherical media, or 360 media it's often called. And this will be with an emphasis on spherical photography. I will show quite a few different examples of how this can be used in education, mostly from my own teaching experience, and some experiments. Then we'll cover, or at least there will be some links to some materials that you can use for your own testing, and I will speak a little bit about different publishing solutions. And this video will of course not have an Q&A. So what we can call spherical media goes back to Johannes de Sacrobosco, a Scottish scientist in the 13th century, at the time where the worldview was heliocentric, but where we didn't have a full understanding of how the planet was placed in space. So closely linked to religious views, there was a view of the Earth being inside the seven spheres, and here we can see Sacrobosco, or a graphic of Sacrobosco with a model of the Earth with the seven spheres. And but what we're going to cover is the pure digital version of spherical media, and this is kind of related to virtual reality, but where virtual reality would be a completely computer-generated environment. Spherical media places the user in a specific point within a sphere. And what I'm going to talk about is even more limited, but quite powerful devices, the cameras that you can see on the right of the screen, having two lenses, one at each side, each lens taking a picture that takes more than 180 degrees vertical and horizontal, and these two pictures are combined into one spherical photo. A little bit of a historical backdrop. Robert Barker, actually again in Scotland. Robert Barker was Irish though. Barker made a panorama, and he made up the term panorama in the late 18th century. So this shows a panorama of Edinburgh. And Barker was really successful with his panoramas, and he made a fortune making these big buildings. This one at Leicester Square in London, that people could go into and explore a panorama. And these panoramas were so huge that they come actually close to entering a sphere. But today, and much more relevant for the topic that I'm discussing, is spherical photos, digital, so to speak, as they are used by services like Google Street View. And this is maybe the way most of us get some experience with spherical photography. Google has for close to 15 years driven around the world taking spherical photos. So this is going to be how can we use this kind of images to make our own material. I won't show this this video, but you can click on it in the presentation. I just want to emphasize that the same cameras can very often be used to take video, and these can be a really nice way to show a specific environment to students or people that might have an interest in exploring this in a different way than you can do with traditional media. It's nice to see spherical media on the flat computer screen. It works fairly decent. But this kind of media reaches their full potential when viewed through VR glasses like Oculus Go that you can see on this image. The devices that become relatively cheap. This is just to show an example of more or less how the image comes out of the camera, like two extremely distorted wide-angle images that are then by software converted to one image, and you can see still very much distorted. And the reason is that the top of the image and the bottom of the image will afterwards be I'm not quite sure about the word, but it will be reduced from a line into a point. And this is kind of the inverse of a Mercator projection, where we know that a map using Mercator's method will be extremely distorted by the poles, North and South Pole, and it will be correct at the equator. So everything at the top of the image and at the bottom of the image will be very much distorted, but when wrapped around a sphere, it all seems like a natural image. So because the spherical image captures all that surrounds the camera, you can do lots of funny things with these cameras, like these tiny planet things, where actually the top of the image has been stretched around a circle, and then having the bottom of the image becoming a point at the middle of this image, and then everything else wraps around within this circle, so to speak. So a little funny way to use these images. But more importantly, in the workshop, I covered a variety of examples, and I won't click into the examples in this video. But you can do so in the presentation that hopefully will follow this video. And anyway, you can see the links in this case to the left-hand side. This is a pretty straightforward virtual tour at Borgund, the Stave Church, at the west coast of Norway. And my point here is that even though our school being located in Bergen on the west coast of Norway, this is too far away to take our students to Borgund and see this incredible church. So instead we will have to, or we could choose to make a virtual tour with using 360 media. So I've downloaded a number of images from Google Street View. I've added some information to the different spheres, and I've connected them using a service called Round Me. And there's a resource which is in Norwegian, but try Google Translate and it will give you a decent idea of what this is all about. For additional information. And the nice thing is that the Google Street View have been almost around every road in large parts of the world. And a lot of users also upload their spherical images to Street View. So at Borgund, there's quite a few images that I can download. And in addition to images that I can take on my own. So in this case, at least last time I visited, I wasn't able to enter the church. So instead I can use an image from inside the church taken by another user. And in this case you can also see that I've added 2 images showing the construction of the stave church. So a student would then stand inside, looking around inside the spherical image of the church, and can have additional information and oral comments on what's important about construction. Another example, which we have done quite a few times in arts and design, in architecture. Students build a small model out of cardboard, and we place the camera inside the model, and the idea is like this. If you build the model in scale 1 to 10, then in this case the camera is on placed on top of a small box of matches. So the distance between the bottom and the middle of the lens will be approximately 16 centimeters. And this is more or less equivalent to the height of the eyes of a grown-up. So of course you can adjust this to be more like the perspective of a child, or add even more height to it. But the idea is that when this is placed inside the model, you actually get the point of view from the eyes of a standing person. Yeah, again, a link to some resources and a short description of how this was done. A similar example, this is more like a fantasy world where a group of students made one student made their own fantasy cardboard box with some properties, and then we linked the images from inside these boxes into a virtual tour. You can see the link to this at the top here. And this is kind of how the assignment were given to the students. So a student, in this case, if you were a student given box number 6, you will have to talk to the students doing box number 2, 7, 5, and 10 in order to figure out how should the entrances and the passage from one room to the other be made. And afterwards, all these boxes were photographed with in this case, one spherical image, and these images were connected. Another example, this is done in quite a few years ago, actually, with students in kindergarten education. And what we did was we went out into an environment close to the school, and the students were to think that okay, if you were to do this with small children, what places in the environment would you consider to be important to places to kind of orient yourself or get familiar with the place? So the students took notes and pictures and stuff, and went back and built a physical model of a map model. And then we took the camera and placed the spherical camera inside the model. And afterwards we did go outside to the corresponding places in the environment and took spherical photos and combined these into one spherical image. And you can see this on the link in the presentation. There is also a resource describing the process, and this is in English, so you can see how this was done. Yeah, and other examples, you can do all kinds of funny things which children and pupils find interesting and intriguing. This kind of Alice in Wonderland feeling, these two persons sitting at a table, combined with an image from inside a flower bed, and all of a sudden you have these persons sitting at a table inside a wood of flowers. Another example, one single image is used to explain the green hus, a traditional Norwegian building type. And what I've done in this case is to make several versions of the image, manipulating, coloring the different parts of the building, as you can see at the bottom, and then adding various informations that explain the different building parts. Yeah, so here you can see the view where all the building parts are highlighted, and then they are isolated in their own views, explaining the different parts. Just another example. This is recreating a historical site at Fjell Fortress outside Bergen. During the Second World War, there was a big cannon on top of this fortress coming from one of the German battleships, Gneisenau. And the cannon was removed 50 years ago. But we can recreate some kind, or at least some of the feeling of being there. Maybe in 1945 when the war ended, and the technique that I've used in this case is to use 3D models from a 3D warehouse and take screenshots of the models from perspectives that match the image. And note, in this case, we can manipulate the image as a flat image as long as we restrict ourselves to do the manipulation close to the equator, the horizontal middle of the image, where the image will not be distorted when it's converted into a sphere. So if in this case, if I were to place the truck closer to the bottom of the image, it will be extremely distorted when this is viewed as spherical image. But it's a way for students and pupils to work with the material, and if not recreating the history, they work with history and have to make decisions about what kind of objects should be included in the images. Again, a resource, this time in Norwegian, but again, Google Translate is your friend. Another example, this is students making birdhouses, and we use the spherical camera to take photos of the birdhouses. and then we manipulate these into pictures from other different places in the world. So in my case, I placed this at a road familiar to me, but a lot of students they actually place their birdhouses in foreign cities and doing various stuff, like this a birdhouse becoming a or a tall house in a Turkish city. So far we're mostly covered various ways of making these images as standalone images, but a significant part of the potential is that you can link these images using a variety of services that makes it possible to make hyperlinks from one sphere to another. So you can make quite complex, almost game-like structures, and of course add different kind of information into the spheres, like at least some services allow you to add sounds, images, text, of course, video. So these spheres can be very information rich. These are some links to material that you can use to experiment with, and I also provided a link to mycipanda.net, which is a simple tool that makes you makes you able to do some initial experiments. If you are to work further with this, I would probably recommend going for some kind of publishing solution. H5P is a good alternative. It's open source. So if you have some people to back you up technically, this can be implemented for free. And there is a variety of services. I haven't experienced with all of them, of course, but I find RoundMe to be quite feature rich and useful, and there are most certainly a lot of others. So, kind of summing up. The cameras are becoming quite cheap. You can get them for about 500 euros, and if you're a little bit watching out, there's always some bargains to do when new cameras arrive at the market. I hope that I've shown you examples that show the potential across a variety of topics. I put in this little bit of awareness or note about awareness of metadata, because if you're going to manipulate an image in an image editor, and you download or store this on a computer, you might lose the metadata that tell the software that shows the spherical image that it's actually a spherical image that it's going to show. So adding metadata, appropriate metadata, is part of what you will have to do if you edit the images yourself and not use them straight out of the camera. And but this is more or less a matter of googling 360 images and metadata, and you will find software that help you do this. And as I covered in the previous slide, there is a lot of different publishing options. If you're just going to view the images on their own, both Google Photos, Facebook, Flickr have support for spherical images, and if you're going to use video, Facebook supports spherical video. YouTube have very good support for spherical video, and also Vimeo. And to the picture to the right shows actually a quite old camera, but at the bottom there is a sound field microphone that takes up sound from all directions, and these can be combined so that you can have an image that is connected to a sound, where the sound actually follows you when you move your view around the image, and this make a very immersive experience. And then I think it's an important question how to become how we make ourselves being content creators, and how we make students produce their own and pupils produce their own material with this kind of media. And I've done quite a few projects in schools, and at least when pupils at the age of 8 to 10, they have no problem using this technology. So it's more a matter of putting this in within a frame where where they actually make an expression about something. So yeah, and this is of course closely related to how to teach with spherical media. What can you use it for? The wise thing is to make it possible to visit places that would in other ways not be accessible to your students or pupils. But there are of course a lot of options for, especially when you allow your students or pupils to create things on their own. During the workshop, we also talked a little bit about this last slide. It's I have to say a work in progress, where it's my way of thinking about how to approach the broader picture of technology in education. So from starting within the individual learner, I think there is always interplay about being on your own in your private and how you think about things in the private sphere, and how you express this or develop this in a more public situation. And in Norwegian schools, there are a lot of emphasis on what we call algorithmic thinking or computational thinking, a systematic approach to the use of computers and how to think about problem solving. But for me, actually, originally being an engineer, but teaching in arts and design, then it becomes important to have this more or less dualistic view, where a systematic approach very often is very much needed, and something you have to learn how the methods how to do things. But it's also extremely important to open up for a more playful way of using technology. And I think the term tinkering, what in Norwegian we will call this more like fiddling with technology, a playful way of experimenting. You don't really know what the problem is or what the solution is going to be, but you kind of play around with technology and come up with some solutions that maybe you haven't thought of in advance. And I think, at least from my perspective, spherical media have been this kind of really useful tool to tinker with the technology, because it has opened up a lot of various ways of using methods that we traditionally do, like building architectural models. All in a sudden we can enter into it without doing computer graphics like computer-aided design, which won't be really available for us when we are going to do this with pupils at the lower levels in schools. But building a physical model, that's within reach for almost all learners at any age. And we can kind of make this into something that resembles computer model. So I just leave this one. It's a work in progress, trying to figure out how to live in this symbiosis between a playful and a systematic approach to teaching and learning.